The summer I turned 26, I moved out of the house and into a tiny one-bedroom above a laundromat. It wasn't glamorous. Most nights smelled like dryer sheets and mildew, but it was mine. I picked up more shifts at the store, finished my associate's degree in business admin, and kept tabs on Wright's Auto from a distance. That place was falling apart, and not just the peeling paint or the dented signage. Word around town was Randy was losing his touch. Customers were walking out. Employees were quitting. But he still strutted around like he was the king of something. I didn't tell anyone, but I started shadowing another garage on the far side of town, Jefferson Automotive. The owner, Clive, was older and looking to sell in the next few years. I made myself useful, washing cars, balancing books, helping him digitize scheduling. He noticed. By the end of that year, Clive offered to sell me a 40% stake, cheaply, if I could secure the financing. And somehow I did. Small business grant, savings, and a co-sign from a former professor who believed in me more than my family ever had. Clive and I kept things quiet. I still worked part-time at the grocery store, kept my head down, but I was building equity, learning how to run the books, deal with suppliers, talk to customers with confidence. Confidence wasn't something I grew up around. It had to be learned, muscle by muscle, like rebuilding a broken car engine. Around that time, Randy started laying off workers. I overheard him at a family cookout bragging about how lazy kids these days don't know how to hold a wrench. He didn't notice me standing by the grill, flipping burgers while he talked down about me like I wasn't even there. He never noticed when I made something better, only when I failed. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to chase his approval anymore. I was going to outgrow it. Outgrow him. The next few months were spent quietly reviewing Randy's business records, which were shockingly easy to access through a public-facing database, since he never updated his privacy settings or kept proper password protections. I saw what I expected: debt, poor reviews, unfiled paperwork. Wright's Auto wasn't just sinking, it was one lawsuit away from closing. I contacted a commercial real estate agent about buying him out. She asked me for a name to put on the letter of interest. I smiled and said, "Put down Cole Whitaker." For the first time, my name would be in a place he couldn't ignore. I kept things quiet for weeks. The letter of interest was sent under an LLC I formed with a lawyer friend of Clive's, Whitaker Properties, LLC. Generic, clean, and most importantly, it kept my name off everything. I used a friend's P.O. box for the reply address, just in case Randy got nosy. Not that he would. He barely understood email, let alone the mechanics of corporate filings. Within 2 weeks, I got the first bite. Randy didn't reply personally, but I knew he saw it. My real estate agent texted me a scanned copy of his response, a single sheet with the words, "Not interested. Try again in 6 months." Typical Randy, proud enough to refuse help, but desperate enough to keep the window cracked. Clive and I spent our evenings at the Jefferson garage, running mock negotiations. We studied Wright's layout, its equipment depreciation, and even figured out that 3 of his lifts weren't up to OSHA code anymore. We ran profit-loss simulations and checked the paper trail of his last 5 quarters. What was available, anyway? It was a mess. Tax filings were incomplete. Payroll had late penalties. Yelp reviews were tanking, mostly from longtime customers who once loved the place. One night, Clive leaned back in his old, oil-stained chair and said, "If you pull this off, Cole, you won't just be buying a business. You'll be closing a chapter of your life the way most people only dream of." I laughed, but it landed differently. Deep down, I knew he was right. The emotional weight of this plan didn't really hit until I saw my mom again. She stopped by my apartment with a tray of lasagna, just because. We sat on my stoop, and she talked about how tired Randy had been lately, how he'd been snapping more often, sleeping less. I wanted to feel sympathy, but instead, I felt a knot in my chest. A small, spiteful voice whispered, "He's unraveling because he knows he's losing control." But I didn't tell her the truth. Not yet. Instead, I asked about the business casually. She mentioned he had been trying to secure a small bank loan to cover payroll. I mentally filed that away, another crack in the foundation. She also said something that stopped me cold. He's been talking about selling, but I don't think he wants to admit defeat. He still thinks you'll come begging to work under him someday. I nearly choked on my coffee. After she left, I wrote it all down. Every word. I kept a journal now, not just for strategy, but for clarity. It reminded me why I started this in the first place. Meanwhile, Mason, my former classmate and now a quiet ally, Offered to run a quick check through his dad's lending office to see if Randy's loan had gone through. It hadn't. Declined for delinquent tax filings. That was the leverage I needed. With Clive's help, I drafted a second offer, slightly lower than the first, citing the risk of debt acquisition and needed repairs. This time, I included a stipulation, a 60-day transition window, with a consultant of our choosing embedded to evaluate operations. The consultant would be me, of course. But again, no names. Just titles and silence. As I hit send, my fingers hovered for a moment. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. Still, I knew if Randy figured out what was really happening before the paperwork landed, he'd blow it all up out of spite, even if it meant burning himself to the ground in the process. So I waited, and planned, and stayed ready. 2 weeks passed, and I heard nothing. Radio silence. At first, I thought maybe Randy had figured something out. Maybe someone at the bank let something slip. Maybe my name got flagged somewhere, and he connected the dots. But Clive stayed calm, and I tried to follow his lead. No news, he said. Usually means deliberation. He's stalling, not rejecting. To kill the anxiety, I kept digging. Through Mason's dad, we learned that Randy had not only been denied his last loan, but had also taken a short-term loan against one of the shop's hydraulic lifts. That told us two things. He was getting desperate, and he was willing to make risky moves to stay afloat. Perfect. I updated the offer with tighter terms. The consultant clause now included a clause about operational handoff cooperation. That clause, when triggered, would legally allow me to start observing day-to-day processes once he accepted the terms, without revealing who I was. Just a representative of Whitaker Properties. The contract was aggressive, but calculated. If Randy signed it, I'd effectively have one foot in the door before he knew my name. Clive's lawyer sent it on a Friday. I didn't sleep much that weekend. Then, the email came. Subject, provisional acceptance pending terms. Randy had signed a letter of intent. He had no idea I was behind the deal. I stared at the screen so long my coffee went cold. 1,000 emotions hit me. Relief, disbelief, a flicker of guilt. Then something heavier. Anticipation. This wasn't over. It was only the beginning. Phase 2 began that Monday. I arrived at Wright's Auto wearing a collared shirt and work boots, holding a clipboard and a laminated badge that read Operations Consultant, WP Holdings. It felt like theater. But Randy didn't blink. He shook my hand like I was any other guy sent from the investors. He looked tired, worn down, like someone clinging to the illusion of relevance. Didn't expect a kid, he grumbled. But I guess corporate likes M. Young. I gave a polite nod. They like him quiet and thorough. He snorted and waved me in. The place hadn't changed. Same grimy break room. Same faded posters on the walls. Same broken clock above the tool lockers. But the soul of the shop felt different. Faint tension hung in the air, like the mechanics were waiting for something big to drop. I spent the first few days observing. I took notes. I asked questions about inventory, turnover time, payroll issues. Randy, surprisingly, was cooperative. He probably thought the faster he played along, the faster he'd see the money. Mason texted me updates from across town. He told his buddy at Ace Tires he's negotiating a deal that'll finally let him retire. I didn't reply. Let him dream. The emotional test came on Thursday when my mom showed up at the shop with lunch. She wasn't expecting me. When she saw me in the waiting room, she paused, holding a paper bag of sandwiches. Her eyes narrowed. "Cole," she asked, confused. "What are you doing here?" I froze. Randy walked out a second later and casually waved his hand. "Oh, he's the new guy the buyers sent in. Sharp kid. We've been getting along fine." Mom's eyes never left me. Her lips parted, but she said nothing. Not in front of him. We locked eyes for a second too long. I gave her a look that begged, "Not here. Please." She turned away without a word and left the sandwiches on the counter. That night, she called. "Tell me the truth," she said. "Is this your deal?" Silence. "Yes," I finally said. "It's mine." Another silence. Then a whisper. "Does he know?" "No." She took a breath like she'd been holding it for years. "Good. Then keep going." I didn't expect that. Not from her. But something in her voice, equal parts sorrow and pride, told me she understood exactly what I was doing. Maybe she'd been waiting for me to stop asking for Randy's approval. Maybe she was waiting for someone, anyone, to break the cycle. I hung up and updated the ledger I kept in my journal. A handwritten note. Today, she didn't stop me. The shift didn't happen overnight. But it started quiet, creeping. Randy had always ruled that garage like a grizzled foreman on a sinking ship. He'd bark orders, micromanage every repair, and laugh at any suggestion for change. But now, he watched me differently. Not suspiciously, just warily, like he was trying to figure out what kind of consultant I was. You ever even pull a transmission? He asked me on Tuesday, standing over a stripped Chevy Tahoe. Only on weekends, I lied, clipboard in hand. I'm not here to fix engines. I'm here to fix flow. He scoffed, but didn't challenge me. Behind his back, I started documenting every bottleneck in the shop. Inventory that was triple ordered. Parts paid for in cash with no paper trail. A side mechanic named Gordo who clocked in daily but hadn't worked on a car in 2 weeks. Randy called him insurance, but it looked a lot like payroll fraud. Each item went into the file labeled post-takeover cleanup. Mason kept feeding me local chatter. One of Randy's poker buddies apparently joked, if this deal goes through, maybe old Wright will finally buy himself a golf cart and retire to Hilton Head. That told me Randy had started fantasizing publicly about his early exit. Good. That meant he wasn't sniffing around who his buyer really was. Still, I needed to move faster. Because the longer I stayed, the riskier it got. Especially after the night my mom texted. He asked if I thought you were up to something. My reply, what did you say? Her, that I don't think you've ever had more clarity in your life. For the first time in years, I felt like she was on my side. Not passively. Not behind closed doors. But in it, with me. By the end of week 2, I had a full operations report drafted. 64 pages. Everything from shop floor inefficiencies to outdated tech platforms. I could have easily passed it on to Clive's legal team for enforcement, but I kept it to myself. I wanted to deliver it. Personally. When the time came. Until then, I maintained the act. But there were cracks. One mechanic, Jake, said to me while we were both looking over a parts invoice, "You remind me of Randy's stepson. The quiet one. Didn't think he had any interest in this place." I froze mid-signature. What happened to him? I asked, voice flat. Jake shrugged. Disappeared, basically. Don't think Randy ever gave him much of a chance. I nodded and left the room. That night, I wrote a journal entry titled, Proof I Was Invisible. Later that week, the mood shifted. I walked in on Randy yelling into his phone. His voice echoed through the back office. I'm not taking another cut just because some consultant doesn't like how I run things. I built this place. I bled for it. He didn't see me standing there, tucked into the side hallway. Whitaker's trying to speed this up, he snapped. They think I'm dumb? I've been doing this longer than their suits have been alive. But he didn't walk away. He sighed and ended the call. Then sat down heavily, head in his hands. I felt nothing. No pity. No satisfaction. Just this strange, hollow ache. I used to crave that man's approval. Now, I only needed his signature. The final documents were drafted by Friday. The closing meeting was scheduled for the next Thursday. The lawyer told me we could keep things anonymous until the morning of the transfer, or Randy would hand over the keys to a corporate rep. That would be me. The question was, did I reveal myself before the ink dried, or after? I called Mom that night. If I tell him I'm the buyer, I said, he might back out. If you don't, she said, he'll never know what he lost. She didn't tell me what to do. That was the test. It wasn't her job to save me from it anymore. It had to be mine. The day before the closing, I stood in the back lot of Wright's Auto, clipboard in one hand, a slowly burning cigarette in the other, when I didn't even intend to smoke. It was just something to do with my fingers while my mind spun gears faster than a stripped engine. I'd watched this place since I was 12. It was where Randy swore I didn't belong. Book smart, soft-palmed, he used to say. This ain't a life for kids who read manuals instead of motors. And yet, here I was, about to own the very business he claimed I'd never survive in. The operation audit was finished. I had files on everything: supplier inefficiencies, inflated vendor rates, misfiled tax receipts, overtime abuse, and 2 side deals Randy had been skimming off for years. Clive's attorneys said we could press for a breach of ethical conduct and void his severance if he acted out post-sale. But I didn't want revenge. I wanted closure. Mason texted me at 7:43 a.m. He's got wind. Spoke to a guy at his poker night. Thinks he's being played by someone local. You okay? My reply, better than I've ever been. Let him guess. Back inside, I called a meeting with the crew. Not everyone. Just the core guys, Jake, Rochelle from parts, and Alan from logistics. I didn't say I was taking over. Not yet. but I walked them through a mock improvement plan, as if it were coming from Whitaker's corporate office. Efficiency upgrades, paid overtime audits, rotating holidays, digital time clocks. They nodded. Rochelle even smiled. Honestly, she said, we've needed something like this for a long time. Whatever Whitaker's got planned, it feels cleaner already. They didn't know they were speaking to Whitaker's shadow, but hearing it gave me the fire to finish this. The next day, closing day, I woke up early and took a walk around the block before the transfer meeting. I'd made my decision. I wasn't waiting until the ink dried. I was going to show my face before the deal was done. Let him see who was taking the keys out of his hand. The room at Whitaker Legal was cold. Steel chairs, white blinds. Randy sat across from the attorney with his usual gruff arrogance, acting like he was doing us a favor. Let's get this over with, he muttered. Got things to do. The lawyer looked at me. I nodded. Then I pulled off the ball cap and removed my glasses. Randy looked up and froze. Silence. You. My voice didn't shake. Yeah, me. He stood up like someone had lit a fire under him. This is some kind of joke? No joke, I said, sliding over the final document. You said I'd never do anything, that I didn't belong here. So I bought the place. You can sign, or the sale falls through, and I'll outbid you at auction when the IRS comes calling. The attorney cleared his throat. Mr. Wright, the offer is final. The funds are secured. You're free to walk away or sign. For a second, I saw the flicker of something real: fear? Defeat? Then it vanished. He grabbed the pen, signed, and walked out without another word. I sat there afterward, not triumphant, not bitter, just still. It was done. That afternoon, I returned to Wright's Auto and gathered the full staff. I'm not a consultant, I said. My name is Tyler Dunn. I'm the new owner. Murmurs, confusion, and then, slowly, claps. Not everyone, but enough. Rochelle walked up and shook my hand. So, she asked, what now, boss? I smiled. We rebuild. Together. Week 1 as the official owner of Wright's Auto started the way any rebirth should: quiet, firm, and full of movement beneath the surface. I didn't rip up the floorboards or plaster my name on the walls. Instead, I walked in that Monday at 6:45 a.m., 20 minutes before the first shift, with 2 boxes, one filled with donuts and the other with policy changes. My first staff meeting wasn't a speech, it was a conversation. We're not just changing who signs the checks, I told them. We're changing how this place feels. We talked about raises, clean hours, clear overtime, respect. Alan raised his hand, hesitantly. So, this isn't just about getting back at Randy? I shook my head. That guy's in my rear view. This is about building something real, something we all belong to. By Thursday, the garage felt different. Even customers noticed it. Rochelle printed new intake forms with our revised policies. Jake, who used to zone out under Randy's lazy supervision, stayed late voluntarily to recalibrate our billing software. For the first time since I was old enough to hold a wrench, this place didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a home. But home still had ghosts. Randy, predictably, didn't go quietly. On Wednesday afternoon, our business line rang, and the front desk forwarded it to me. This Tyler, the voice growled. I didn't even flinch. Sure is. You think you won? You got no idea what you're in for. This place will eat you alive. I stared out the window, the sunlight streaking the shop floor like a quiet confirmation. Thanks for the warning, I said, but I've already lived through worse. And I survived you. Click. I blocked the number. Mom visited that evening. She didn't say much, just brought by a box of spare tools from the garage at home and set them down with a soft sigh. You were always meant to fix things, she said. Just never thought it'd be this. We hugged, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel like something tentative or strained. It felt like family. Friday rolled in, and so did our first week's metrics. We had fewer write-offs, more satisfied customers, more employees clocking in on time, because now they had reason to. I stayed late that night, sweeping the garage myself. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because this floor, stained with years of oil and regret, now felt like mine. Not in a petty way. In a permanent way. Later, I sat down and pulled out a fresh notebook labeled, The Legacy Plan. Page 1 was titled, Build with Purpose. And under it, I wrote, This garage is more than revenge. This team is more than survivors. I am more than what Randy said I'd be. I closed the book, locked up the shop, and stepped out into the cool night. I didn't need Randy to understand why I did it. I just needed to keep building. Because winning isn't about tearing someone down. It's about lifting yourself so high that no one can ever push you beneath them again.